I never imagined I'd be sitting here, writing this story about my wife, Lisa, and how everything fell apart. We'd been married for about 8 years, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. Sure, there were little arguments here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary. She was gorgeous, confident, a real firecracker, always had some snarky comment ready, but that's what I liked about her. She kept me on my toes. But lately, I'd started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Small stuff at first, missed calls, late nights she'd brush off as work or friends, and a weird distance in her attitude. She'd snap at me over minor things, act like I was annoying her just by being around. I figured maybe I was overthinking it, until I caught her lying about something that turned everything upside down. One night, I decided to check our bank statements. I know it's not exactly innocent, but I was just curious about the recent spending. That's when I saw it. A series of transactions with our wealth manager, Greg. Nothing suspicious on the surface, just normal meetings about our investments. But then I noticed the time stamps. Late nights, sometimes after hours, and the messaging history. There were these texts between Lisa and Greg that didn't seem purely professional. Flirty, maybe. I couldn't tell for sure, but the tone was definitely inappropriate. I felt this knot tighten in my stomach. I never thought Lisa, my wife, would do something like this, mess around with the guy responsible for our finances of all people. At first, I convinced myself I was paranoid, maybe reading too much into it. But then I remembered how she'd been acting lately, secretive, defensive when I asked about her phone, quick to dismiss my concerns. I started digging deeper, and each discovery just made my stomach turn colder. The worst part, she'd been lying to my face, telling me she was meeting friends for coffee or shopping, when really she was with Greg, having who knows what kind of sex or worse. I didn't want to believe it at first. I never thought she was capable of cheating, especially not with someone so intertwined in our lives, our financial security, our future. But the evidence was stacking up, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was like watching a train wreck happen in slow motion. I felt betrayed, humiliated, furious. How long had this been going on? Did she love him? Was I just some fool who worked his ass off to give her the best life only to get played? That night I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over the images in my head. Her lying, her laughing with him over those messages, the way she'd look at me with that fake smile. I decided I needed to confront her. I wasn't going to let her keep this secret. I wanted the truth, no matter how ugly it was. I knew it would be a mess, probably the biggest fight we'd ever have, but I was done pretending everything was fine. I needed to hear her explain herself, or better yet, see her squirm when I called her out. So the next day I waited until she got home from work. She was still her bitchy, bossy self, smirking, rolling her eyes, trying to brush me off when I asked her about her weekend plans. But I wasn't going to let her dodge this. I sat her down, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her I knew everything. Her face, priceless. The way she froze, then started to spin some bullshit about misunderstanding, about how I was just paranoid, that Greg was just a friend and nothing more, that she was tired of my accusations, and I was crazy to think she'd cheat on me. I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted to scream, I wanted to shake her, but I kept my voice steady. I told her I'd seen the texts, the late-night meetings, the lies. I told her I knew she'd been lying about her meetings, lying about us, lying about everything. That I wasn't stupid and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Her reaction, she threw a fit, said I was overreacting, that I was jealous, that I was just insecure. She called me paranoid and possessive, and accused me of snooping because I didn't trust her. Honestly, that hurt worse than the betrayal itself. To hear her call me insecure, to dismiss what I found as just my own insecurities, made me feel like I was losing my mind. She was so quick to lie, so dismissive of my feelings. I didn't know what to believe anymore. All I knew was I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I needed to figure out what to do next, how to handle this mess, how to get her to admit what she'd done, or if I even should. At that moment, I felt a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about some affair. It was about trust, respect, everything I thought we had. And I knew one thing for sure: my world was about to change. After that confrontation, everything spiraled even further out of control. Lisa kept up her act. She'd cry, scream, call me names, accuse me of being paranoid or controlling. But deep down, I knew she was lying through her teeth. I also knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug, not anymore. I needed facts, definitive proof. Sitting there, furious and betrayed, I decided I had to dig deeper, find out exactly what she'd been up to with Greg. For a couple of days, I played it cool, pretending I didn't know much. But I kept an eye on her, noticed more odd behaviors. Her phone was glued to her hand. She was extra careful about her messages, always hiding her screen when I'd walk into the room. She started canceling plans, claiming she was busy with work or taking a break, but I knew better. She was hiding something. That's when I decided I'd need to get into her phone, her email, her social media. If she didn't want to be honest, I'd find out the truth myself. One night, I waited until she was out of the house. She said she was meeting a friend for drinks. I knew it was with Greg, or at least I hoped I could catch her if I checked her phone. I found her purse on the kitchen counter when I went into the bedroom. Her phone was inside, just sitting there unlocked. My heart was pounding. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but I couldn't help myself. I grabbed her phone and started scrolling. What I found was worse than I expected. Her messages with Greg were more explicit than I imagined, flirty, suggestive, sometimes downright inappropriate. They talked about sex, about exploring new things, about how Lisa couldn't wait to see him again. I saw images she'd sent him, innocent at first, but then more provocative. There was one message where she said she was so horny and asked him if he wanted to help her with that. My stomach turned over. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. It didn't stop there. Her email inbox contained receipts for hotel bookings, secretive calendar entries, plans she'd made behind my back, all for Greg. I saw her planning meetings, even a little getaway, just the two of them. The level of her deception hit me like a freight train. She lied about everything. The dinner dates, the late nights, even our anniversary plans. All fake. All with him. I felt this sick mix of anger and despair. How could she do this? After everything we built, after all the trust. I was furious at Greg, sure, but mostly I was furious at Lisa for betraying me so thoroughly. It wasn't just about the sex, it was the betrayal of trust, the sneaking around, the lies. I couldn't believe I married someone so bitchy, so manipulative. The woman I thought I knew was just a facade. Underneath, she was a liar, a cheat, a user. The next morning, I woke up feeling numb. I knew I couldn't keep pretending like I didn't know what I knew. I had to confront her again, this time with everything laid bare. I wanted her to see that I wasn't some fool anymore, that I had proof, that I knew exactly what she'd been doing. I prepared myself. I took her phone, printed out some of the more incriminating texts, saved screenshots, had everything ready. I wasn't going to let her deny it this time. When she came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch, my hands trembling, the papers stacked in front of me. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk, trying to act like she didn't have a care in the world. But her eyes flickered, and I knew she was nervous. I told her I'd found everything, her messages, her plans, her lies. Her face went pale for a second, then she started her usual bullshit, trying to deny it, saying I was crazy, jealous, and paranoid. I cut her off. I told her I wasn't stupid anymore, that I'd seen everything. That she'd been sleeping around with Greg, that she'd been lying to me about it for months. I told her I knew about the sex, the secret meetings, the hotel stays. Her reaction was pure bitch, defensive, angry, borderline hysterical. She started yelling, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining her life, accusing me of trust issues and insecurity. She said I was just jealous because I wasn't enough for her anymore. That's when I finally snapped. I told her I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulation, her cheating, that I was done pretending. I said I was going to leave her, if not today, then soon. I said she could stay, but I was done trusting her. I was sick of her fake, bitchy attitude, her lies, her affairs. I told her she was a piece of shit for what she did, and I'd never forgive her. Her face twisted with rage. She stormed out, crying, yelling that I was the asshole, that she'd never loved Greg, that she was just playing along to get what she wanted. She said I was just some insecure guy who couldn't handle a strong woman. It was a typical Lisa move: blame everyone else, deflect, deny. But deep down, I felt relief. I finally knew the truth, and I was done. I decided I wouldn't fight for her anymore, not after what I'd seen that night. I stayed up, reflecting on everything. I felt betrayed, angry, but also oddly liberated. I'd uncovered the lies, the betrayal, and I finally had the courage to face reality. I knew I had to make some tough decisions, whether to fight for the marriage or walk away. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. I'd learned that some people, especially ones like Lisa, are just manipulative and selfish, and sometimes you have to cut your losses. I was hurt, but I was also ready to move on. The days that followed were a roller coaster of emotions. I felt like I was walking around in a fog, angry, hurt, and somehow exhausted all at once. I kept replaying everything in my head: her lies, her sneaky texts, the fake smile she'd always wear when she was trying to cover up what she was really feeling. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting. I had built my entire life around her, and she'd been cheating behind my back with our own money manager, Greg. The whole thing just felt like a bad joke I'd been the punchline to. I knew I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what just yet. I started thinking about my options. Should I try to save this mess, or was it better to cut her loose and start over? Part of me still wanted to believe there was a way to fix things, but deep down I knew that trust was broken beyond repair. Still, I needed clarity. I decided I'd get some space, some time to think without her constant bitchy attitude or her gaslighting. One thing that helped was reaching out to a lawyer friend I knew. I wanted to understand what my rights were, especially since we shared assets and investments. She told me that I should be careful, document everything, especially her communication with Greg, and start thinking about what I wanted to do long term. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. My wife's betrayal had shattered whatever was left of my trust, and I knew I'd have to make some serious decisions soon. What really pushed me to action was the realization that her affair wasn't just an emotional betrayal. It was also a threat to our financial stability. Greg, the wealth manager, had access to our accounts, and I had no idea what else they might have been up to. I decided I'd need to get a professional involved, someone who could look into her communications more thoroughly, maybe even track her activity. Trust me, I was fed up with her bitchy attitude and her lies, but I also knew this wasn't just about feelings anymore. It was about protecting my future. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like she owned the place, throwing fits, calling me names, trying to guilt-trip me into working things out. Honestly, I couldn't stand her bitchy attitude anymore. Every time she snapped or lied, I felt this rush of anger, but I also felt a strange sadness. She was so good at pretending she was the victim, always painting herself as the wronged woman. She'd say I was controlling, insecure, paranoid, yet all I'd been doing was trying to trust her. I'd given her everything, and she'd repaid me with betrayal. I decided I needed to confront her one last time, but this time with everything laid bare. I wanted her to see that I knew exactly what she'd done, that I was serious about ending it. I sat her down in the living room, and for once I wasn't going to hold back. I told her I'd found proof of her affair with Greg, that I knew about the sex, the secret meetings, the hotel stays. Her face twisted with rage. She immediately started yelling, calling me a jealous idiot, saying I was just trying to control her. She accused me of spying on her, of ruining her life. Her bitchy attitude was so clear in that moment. She refused to accept any responsibility, instead blaming me for everything. She said I was paranoid, that she'd never cheat, that I was just insecure and jealous because I wasn't good enough. I looked at her with disgust and told her I wasn't going to waste my breath anymore. I said I was done trusting her, that I was going to leave, and that I was going to protect what I could of our assets. I explained I was sick of her lying, her manipulative attitude, her constant bitchiness. That's when she really lost it. She started crying, screaming, calling me every name under the sun. She said I was a naive fool, that I'd never find someone who loved me like she did, that I was just insecure and weak. Honestly, I just sat there, watching her bitchy face twist with anger and tears. It felt like I was finally waking up from a nightmare. I knew I needed to act, but I also knew the pain would linger. Still, I told her that I'd had enough, and that I was leaving for my own sanity. The final straw was when she told me I was overreacting, that I was just jealous because she'd been so bored with me, and that Greg was just someone she used to vent to. I saw through the lies. I felt betrayed in a way I couldn't even describe. I wasn't sure how I'd move forward, but I knew I had to start planning. This wasn't just about her cheating anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my sanity. No more bitchy lies, no more manipulations. I'd been played, and now I had to find a way to deal with the fallout, one step at a time. The days after that last confrontation were the darkest I've ever experienced. I felt like I was walking through a fog of betrayal and heartbreak. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her bitchy face twisted with rage, her lies swirling around me like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every little thing reminded me of how she'd used me, how she'd lied about everything. The trust I had in her was shattered beyond repair, and honestly, I felt like I lost a part of myself along the way. I started making serious plans. I contacted a divorce lawyer, someone who specialized in affairs and financial betrayals. I told her everything I found, all the evidence of the texts, the hotel reservations, the secret meetings. She told me I had a solid case, especially since I had proof of her cheating with Greg, and that I should start documenting every interaction, every lie, every manipulation. She also warned me about the possibility of Lisa trying to hide money or assets, so I started digging into our joint accounts and investments. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like she was the victim. She'd call me a controlling asshole, accuse me of being insecure, and try to paint herself as the wronged woman. She'd say I was just jealous of her happiness with Greg, that I was insecure about losing my wealth and status. I couldn't believe her bitchy attitude. She was so good at spinning her lies, twisting everything around to make herself look innocent. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who used her charm and bitchiness to keep me in line, all while screwing someone else behind my back. One night, I caught her in another lie. She told me she was working late, but I saw her sneaking her phone into her purse. I followed her to a hotel parking lot not far from our house and saw her get into a car with Greg. I didn't want to confront her there, so I just watched from a distance. The sight of them together, kissing behind tinted windows, made my stomach turn. I felt my fists clench. All that trust, all those years, just evaporated in that moment. That was the point I knew I had to do something drastic. I couldn't keep living in this nightmare where she was cheating and lying while I was left in the dark. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could and confront her again, this time with everything laid out clearly. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just some fool she could manipulate anymore. She had to face the consequences of her bitchy attitude and her betrayal. The next day, I sat her down again. I told her I knew about her latest affair with Greg, that I'd seen her getting into his car, that I had proof of everything. Her face melted into that bitchy sneer, the one she always wore when she was trying to dismiss something she didn't want to face. She yelled at me, calling me a jealous psycho, saying I was just insecure and controlling. She told me I was ruining her life and that she'd never cheat on me, that I was just paranoid. I looked at her, feeling a cold rage. I told her I wasn't going to listen to her bullshit anymore. I told her I had plenty of proof, that I was going to leave, and that she could keep her manipulative attitude. I told her I was done being her fool, her punchline, her cuckold. She yelled and screamed, calling me a jealous bastard, trying to turn everything around on me, but I was past caring what she thought. I'd already lost respect for her. She was nothing but a bitchy liar in my eyes now. I told her that the only thing she was good at was lying and manipulating, and that I was done with her. I said I'd be contacting a lawyer and starting the process of separating everything. I felt empty, but also strangely relieved. I knew I'd done the right thing, even if it hurt like hell. I saw her bitchy face twist into a furious crying mess, but I didn't care. I was finally taking control of my life again, and that was all that mattered. That night, I stayed up thinking about what came next. The pain, the betrayal, the bitchy attitude, all of it haunted me. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally free from her manipulations and her lies. I realized I'd learned a lot about trust, about how some people, especially bitchy, manipulative women, are just out for themselves. The lessons cut deep, but I knew I'd come out stronger. I decided I wouldn't let her ruin me anymore. I'd rebuild, one step at a time, and I'd make damn sure she'd regret ever betraying me like this. The aftermath of confronting Lisa was a whirlwind. I moved out shortly after, not just because I couldn't stand to be in the same room with her bitchy attitude anymore, but because I needed space to breathe and figure out what comes next. I told her I was filing for divorce, and she threw a fit, screaming, crying, calling me every name she could think of. She tried to guilt me, saying I was ruining her life and that I was just insecure and jealous. Honestly, I'd never seen her this bitchy and manipulative before, and it made me realize how much of her personality was just a facade to keep control. While I was packing up, I found even more evidence of her betrayal. Hidden receipts, more messages with Greg, plans for the secret getaway. I felt disgusted, like I'd been played for a fool all these years. I kept thinking about all the times she dismissed my concerns as jealousy or insecurity, when really, she was just out for her own pleasure and money. The worst part was knowing she'd lied to my face about everything, all the while smiling that bitchy smile, pretending she still loved me. I reached out to a lawyer who specialized in divorce and assets. We started the process, and I made sure to gather all the financial documents showing her secret dealings with Greg. I wanted to make sure she didn't try to hide anything or cheat me out of what was rightfully mine. The lawyer advised me to be prepared for a tough fight, especially since she was so manipulative, but I was ready for it. I had the proof, and I was determined to get everything I deserved. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to keep control. She'd call me constantly, accusing me of ruining her life, calling me possessive and jealous, trying to turn the tables. But I didn't bother responding anymore. I realized she thrived on drama and manipulation, but I wasn't going to be her pawn anymore. I blocked her number, stopped replying, and focused on rebuilding my life. It was clear that her bitchy attitude and lies weren't going to change. She was who she was, and I had to accept that. The hardest part was dealing with the emotional fallout. I felt angry, betrayed, and incredibly sad. I'd loved her, trusted her, and she'd thrown all that away for Greg and her own selfish needs. It hurt knowing I was just another fool she'd used to get what she wanted. But I also learned a lot about myself, about how strong I can be when pushed, and about the importance of trust and honesty in a relationship. I realized I'd been naive, too trusting, and that I needed to be more careful in the future. One thing I kept telling myself: I'm better off without her bitchy attitude poisoning my life. I don't need her manipulation, her lies, her cheating. I deserve peace and honesty. I started focusing on myself, working out more, reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with, and trying to rebuild some faith in myself. I also started therapy, which helped me process all this mess. I'm not perfect, and I still get angry sometimes, but I know I'm better off now. The pain will fade and I will heal. In the end, I've learned that some people, no matter how bitchy or manipulative, are just not worth fighting for. I thought I was married for life, but I see now that honesty and respect are non-negotiable. If someone cheats on you, lies to your face, and manipulates you, there's no coming back from that. I'm done with her. I only hope that anyone reading this, if you're in a similar situation, realizes your worth and doesn't accept betrayal or manipulation. Cut the bitchy, lying assholes loose. Because no amount of money, status, or comfort is worth losing your dignity and peace of mind. I'm still healing, still moving on. But I'm grateful I finally saw her for what she truly was, an insecure, manipulative bitch who only cared about herself. And now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life, better and stronger than before. Looking back now, I realize I've learned some tough lessons, lessons I probably wouldn't have grasped if I hadn't gone through all this. The biggest one is that you can't trust someone who shows consistent bitchy attitude and lies. No matter how much you want to believe in the best, sometimes people reveal their true colors when you least expect it. Lisa was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to act bitchy, how to lie convincingly, and how to keep her secrets hidden until she thought she could get away. With it, what hurts the most is knowing how much I was blinded by love and trust. I kept making excuses. She's stressed, she's overwhelmed, she just needs support. But all along, she was sneaking around, lying, cheating. That bitchy attitude was just a shield, a way for her to keep control and hide her true self. I was so busy trying to keep the peace that I didn't see the warning signs until it was painfully obvious. Now I see that some women like her only care about themselves, using their charm, their bitchy attitude, and their lies to get what they want. The ironic thing is that I used to think I was lucky to have her. She was smart, beautiful, confident, always had some bitchy remark ready to put people in their place. But now I see her for what she really was: insecure, manipulative, and totally selfish. And honestly, I'm glad I found out before I invested more years into this nightmare. Better to learn the truth now than keep living in her false world of bitchy lies. I've also realized that my own worth isn't tied to someone like her. I thought I was a fool for trusting her. But I've come to see that I was just too naive. Next time I'll be more cautious. I'll pay attention to the bitchy attitude, the lies, the manipulations, because they're usually a sign of someone who only cares about their own interests. And I won't let myself get blindsided again. Most importantly, I've learned to value myself more. I don't need a woman who's bitchy, manipulative, and unfaithful to feel complete. I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who treats me like a partner, not a fool. I've started to rebuild my life piece by piece, and I refuse to let her bitchy attitude or her lies destroy me anymore. Yeah, it hurts, but it also made me stronger. I'm grateful for that. So, to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, whether it's betrayal, lies, or just a bitchy attitude, you have to remember your worth. Don't tolerate bullshit just because you want things to work. Cut out the toxic people, focus on yourself, and don't be afraid to walk away from the drama. Because at the end of the day, respect and honesty are what matter most. Everything else, money, status, even love, pales in comparison to your self-respect. I'm finally at peace now, knowing I dodged a bullet. Lisa's bitchy attitude and her betrayal taught me that I should never settle for less than honesty and loyalty. I've moved on, and I'm building a better future, one where I don't have to deal with her manipulative bullshit. Life is too short to waste on people who only care about themselves, and I'm done feeling sorry for myself. I'm just glad I found the strength to walk away and start over.